Every year, thousands in Mexico become targets of cartel kidnappings. While many disappear, a few manage to break free. Here are the stories of 10 individuals who escaped brutal cartel kidnappings. Number 10. Latavia McGee and Eric James Williams. July 15, 2023. Eric James Williams and Latavia Tay McGee faced their worst nightmare. Traveling to Matamoros, Mexico, aiming for a tummy tuck clinic, they unexpectedly encountered danger as their white minivan roamed the streets. An unfortunate turn led them into the clutches of armed gunmen suspected to be part of the fierce Gulf drug cartel. Unknown to Eric's wife Michelle, he had even left the U.S. The last message she received from him was that fateful Friday morning. Silence followed, leaving her to think the worst. Hours turned into days. Her anxiety reached a peak as she and her son clung to the hope of hearing good news. Michelle's sleepless nights were spent hoping, praying, and scouring the news for any leads. By Tuesday, the relentless pursuit of authorities and international forces bore fruit. Their captors had transported them to a notorious stash house in Ejido Longoreño. This discovery led to the arrest of 24-year-old Jose N., who officials believe had been assigned the duty of ensuring the hostages didn't escape. His apprehension provided a vital breakthrough in the investigation, offering a potential inside look into the workings of the cartel and the kidnapping.
Disturbing video shows the aftermath of the kidnapping as heavily armed men loaded them into a white truck and transported them to various locations to evade capture.
In the wake of the abduction, a chilling video surfaced, revealing the heartbreaking moment the group was ambushed. With 3 members appearing lifeless in the footage, the urgency to find them intensified. Amidst the chaos, hope shone through. Eric and Latavia, though traumatized, showed remarkable strength after their deadly experience. They were found Tuesday morning in a wooden house in the Lagunona area, just outside of Matamoros, as stated by Mexican officials during a news conference. Inside that very house, one of their deceased friends was discovered, while the second was found outside the premises. Eric, having been shot thrice in the legs, underwent surgery and is now on the road to recovery in a Texas hospital. Latavia, although visibly shaken, was largely unscathed. However, their companions, Shaid Woodward and Zindel Brown, met a tragic end. Their lives, brutally snuffed out, leave behind a tale of an adventure turned tragic. Number 9. Diego Fernandez de Ceballos. May 14, 2010. Diego Fernandez de Ceballos, also known as Jefe Diego, disappeared. He wasn't just any figure in Mexico. He led the National Action Party, or PAN, headed Congress, and had once pursued the presidency in 1994. So the question arises, who would target someone that important? 7 months later, he was back. A group called the Network for Global Transformation claimed responsibility for his abduction. They accused him of being part of an elite group that manipulated elections, backed drug lords, and mishandled the economy with the U.S. But upon his release, Fernandez gave no hints about who they really were. Fauzi Hamdan, a close associate, described the kidnappers as politically driven with significant resources, but their true identity remained unclear. Some believed the Popular Revolutionary Army, a leftist group, was responsible. Even though they denied it, their past of kidnappings for ransom and ties to other rebel groups made some think that they were involved. Moreover, Jefe Diego made a promise during his captivity. He would combat poverty, injustice, and impunity. Attention also turned to organized crime. With recent arrest of those connected to Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, leader of the Sinaloa cartel, some thought they played a role. Yet this wasn't their usual operation. The Familia Michoacana, known for their resources and motives, seemed like a likelier candidate. And it was no secret that Fernandez de Ceballos' law firm had defended drug traffickers. Another angle were the professional kidnappers in Mexico, groups known to detain victims for long periods, demanding hefty ransoms. Rumors had spread afterward claiming that Jefe Diego's release might have cost between $20 million to $50 million. But amongst all these theories, one stood out for its audacity. Could Jefe Diego have planned his own kidnapping to further his political ambitions? As if the story wasn't complex enough, Colombian authorities later found emails from FARC discussing a significant operation with Mexican contacts. Were they a part of this web? Regardless, the story of Jefe Diego's release from the clutches of potentially brutal cartels remains one of Mexico's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. Number 8. Tiffany Hartley. September 30th, 2010. David and Tiffany Hartley, enjoying a day in the Falcon Lake on their personal watercraft, suddenly found themselves in danger. 3 boats filled with armed men from the Zetas drug cartel swiftly approached them, and without warning, shots were fired. David Hartley was hit, and in the ensuing chaos, Tiffany made a daring escape, leaving her injured husband behind. The aftermath was filled with controversy. Tiffany's recounting of the tragic event raised eyebrows, as doubters questioned the truth of her story, given the lack of any other witnesses. However, the investigation took a dark twist.
Martinez Escobedo, the alleged regional Zetas leader for Tamaulipas. Martinez is the ringleader of those who shot and killed Hartley.
October 8th, 2012. Salvador Alfonso Martinez Escobedo, believed to be a high-ranking member of the notorious Zetas drug cartel, was arrested. Mexican authorities linked him to both David's murders and the subsequent killing of the investigator. The specifics of Salvador's involvement remain dark, with details about his direct role in the murder still unclear. Now, amidst the trauma and media attention, Tiffany Hartley became known as the Pirate Lake Widow. This title wasn't just a label, it was a mission. Tiffany used her unexpected fame to highlight the wild drug cartel violence plaguing the border. She also talked about the proximity of the threat, pointing out that the same individuals responsible for her husband's death were operating right across the US-Mexico border. However, even with the arrest of Martinez, closure remained elusive. David Hartley's body was never found, leaving a lasting pain for his loved ones. The exact details of what transpired on that September day on Falcon Lake remained a mystery. Questions outnumbered answers, and for Tiffany, the quest for justice continued. Though Tiffany had faced doubts and many challenges, she never gave up. Her journey was more than just about finding her husband's killers. It was about making people aware of the bigger problem of cartel violence and how it affects many lives. Through her nonstop efforts to raise awareness, Tiffany showed the world that behind every news headline, there's a human story that deserves to be heard. Number 7. An unidentified victim. July 9th, 2014, in St. Matthews, South Carolina, an unidentified man set out to pick up a friend but never reached his destination. His concerned fiancée soon discovered his abandoned truck with the engine still running. And guess what? A witness reported seeing a black vehicle speeding away from the scene. That same day, the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale manhunt on receiving a report of the man's disappearance. By evening, an unsettling call from Mexico reached his fiancée. The caller stated that he had him, and he was unharmed, demanding that the man's father speak with him the next day. From July 10th to the 15th, a total of 13 calls were made, setting the stage for demanding negotiations. But here's the twist. The victim and his father were involved in a significant transaction, delivering a marijuana shipment valued at $200,000 on behalf of a Mexican drug cartel. When that payment fell through, the cartel held them accountable. Reports suggest that this unpaid debt put them in a dangerous spotlight, making them prime targets. Due to mounting pressure, the victim distanced himself from the cartel's operations. The FBI, having secured legal permission, recorded the negotiation calls. The kidnappers demanded ransom starting from $100,000 and at times reaching $400,000. They also sought the return of the 200 pounds of unpaid-for marijuana. July 14th saw action when FBI agents targeted a residence in Garland, North Carolina, arresting 26-year-old Juan Manuel Fuentes Morales. Morales offered a story about purchasing phones from an unknown individual, but the agents were skeptical. Morales was known to the authorities as a key operative within the cartel's hierarchy. July 15th, agents moved on to another location in South Roseboro, North Carolina. There, they discovered the victim, restrained and overseen by 57-year-old Ruben Sager Rangel and 22-year-old Luis Castro Villada. Once safe, the victim detailed his ordeal, noting a failed escape attempt which led to a confrontation with Morales. With the situation resolved, the FBI emphasized the targeted nature of this crime while ensuring public safety. Thankfully, the victim was reunited with his family, marking the end of a perilous episode. The incident drew international attention, highlighting the dangerous connection between drug trafficking and kidnappings. Number 6. Cesar. September 20th, 2019. Cesar, a hard-working man from Progreso, Honduras, began a daring journey for a better life in the United States. Earning just about $5 a day by selling milk in his village, he hoped to reunite with a brother in Jacksonville, Florida. Cesar paid a smuggler $2,300, using his car as part of the payment, and promised to pay an additional $5,500 after crossing the border. The trip started in Chiapas, Mexico, where Cesar and a group boarded the notorious train La Bestia, heading north. Trouble struck in Puebla. Some of his group got caught by the National Migration Institute. Now alone, Cesar continued through Nuevo León and eventually reached Reynosa, Tamaulipas. That's when a greater disaster struck. He, along with 20 other migrants, got kidnapped in Reynosa by Los Zetas, that dangerous Mexican cartel. In the hands of ruthless abductors, Cesar faced brutal treatment. The cartel divided the migrants based on who had guides and who didn't. Cesar, with others, was transferred to a van and taken to a safe house. The captor's terrifying reputation preceded him, and Cesar believed he was going to die. As days passed, they moved Cesar and 9 others from Reynosa across the river to McAllen. It appeared too easy, suggesting a high level of organization by the kidnappers. In McAllen, Cesar found himself working with 50 others, all held captive on a ranch. Their freedom came at a price of $5,000 ransom. And to ensure that they got accurate details about family members in the U.S. who could pay, the abductors didn't hesitate to use severe intimidation, including threatening to harm children. Many faced beatings and other horrific abuses for any misinformation. On a fateful night, when the lights were turned off, Cesar made a bold move. He escaped through a bathroom window and ran non-stop for about 20 minutes until he encountered the Border Patrol. However, that relief was short-lived. 2 months later, he found himself deported back to Honduras. Back in Progreso, memories of his terrifying ordeal haunted him. Despite all he'd been through, Cesar's determination stayed strong. He set on trying once again, aiming for a life of dignity in the United States. Number 5. Yolanda Alvarez Antunes. January 10, 2013, Ahuehuepan, Mexico. Yolanda anxiously gathered ransom money, believing it was the key to her husband Veto's freedom. However, that Wednesday night at around 10:30 p.m., as she handed over the cash to armed men, she too was abducted. Now, this abduction was similar to the event she had experienced just a week before when armed men had dragged Veto from their small grocery store. The lone payphone in their town rang with the chilling demand of the kidnapper. They demanded a hefty sum of 500,000 pesos. That's almost $40,000. In the mountains, surrounded by 18 young kidnappers from the La Familia Michoacana cartel, Yolanda's thoughts raced. She overheard him speaking about the territories they controlled and the regions they had to evade because of rival gangs. This was a harsh reality she had only heard of and never experienced firsthand. But here she was, in the heart of it, hoping that the ransom would ensure her freedom. Hostages had to ask for permission to use the restroom. One wrong step, and the threat of violence was clear. As Yolanda lay on the ground, the discomfort she experienced was nothing compared to the psychological terror she faced. As days passed, Yolanda faced terrifying choices. When told the ransom was short by 2,000 pesos, the kidnappers debated whether to release her or keep one of her younger family members. However, a voice among the captors argued for her release, noting that the missing sum wasn't significant, so she was finally set free. Reunited with her family, Yolanda held on to hope that Beto would return. However, as days turned into years, he became one of over 25,000 missing individuals in Mexico. Yolanda, now 56, struggles with a haunting question. Will she ever find peace, or will the mystery of her husband's disappearance keep on haunting her? Number 4. AG, aka Ghost. July 17, 2019. Mexican customs officials were startled as a man burst from the trunk of a car at the Mexico-US border. Hands tied, mouth sealed with duct tape. The man was AG, also known as the Ghost. He'd been kidnapped and was set to be handed over to a dangerous cartel because of an alleged debt. Behind the wheel was 54-year-old Roxanne Rocky Marie Carpenter, attempting to trade Ghost for 30 pounds of marijuana. Roxanne wasn't your typical criminal mastermind. With 3 felonies and 7 minor offenses, mostly for theft and drugs, she had tangled with the law multiple times since 2002. By 2017, her house doubled as a storage unit for marijuana. But how did AG find himself at the center of this dangerous exchange? Well, the issue started when he accused one of Roxanne's associates, Fausto "Zombie" Velasquez, of misplacing marijuana. AG himself was no stranger to shady dealings. He had a record of smuggling and marijuana trafficking around 30 times. When the drugs disappeared, an angry cartel member visited Roxanne, believing AG was hiding with her since he worked closely with Velasquez. To calm the cartel down, Roxanne and her crew came up with a plan to hand over AG. Their motive wasn't purely survival. They were out to upgrade their lifestyles. The cartel's bounty for AG was $37,000, but Roxanne wanted a direct payout. The cartel offered a truck, but Roxanne held out, settling for 30 pounds of marijuana. This kidnapping scheme involved Roxanne, Velasquez, Felix Loki Begay, an Army veteran, and Brian Edward Myers, a friend to AG. Myers was to trick AG and Begay was the muscle. Armed with handguns and a cattle prod, they ambushed AG, electrocuted him, and choked him until he was subdued. They treated him like an animal, even using a dog leash to control him. The plan seemed easy. Roxanne would drive AG to Mexico where she would meet the cartel members for this exchange. But things went sideways when she got lost and had to regroup at a bar. While they partied and indulged in drugs, Ghost remained trapped in the trunk. Later, Roxanne followed Velasquez's car to the border. When Roxanne passed through the border crossing, Ghost seized his chance, slipping out of the trunk unnoticed. Unaware of Ghost's escape, Roxanne met with those members 600 meters from the crossing. The Mexicans, surprised by the sudden turn of events, advised Roxanne to return to the U.S. on foot, offering to get rid of the vehicle on her behalf. In the end, Roxanne was arrested, but Ghost's escape was nothing short of a miracle. Considering the cartel's reputation, his fate could have been far worse. Number 3. Alan Pulido.
Mexico international soccer player Alan Pulido is a free man after being kidnapped over the weekend. Officials said joint federal and state forces helped rescue Pulido.
May 28, 2016, in Ciudad Victoria, Mexico. A night of celebration took a dark turn for Alan Pulido, a famous football player. You see, Alan and his girlfriend drove away from a party, and suddenly a group of armed Los Zetas ambushed their vehicle. In mere moments, Pulido was forcibly dragged away, leaving his girlfriend in shock. But here's the thing, Alan Pulido wasn't the type to sit back and let fate take its course. Inside the captor's safe house, he found an opportunity. Alone with one of the kidnappers, he acted quickly, disarming the man and securing a .50 cal weapon. Even more crucial, he got a hold of the kidnapper's phone, a link to the outside world. Now here's where it gets interesting. With the phone, Pulido contacted the police, providing them with every detail of his location, describing the cars outside, a distinct antenna, and the layout of the house. His detailed account aimed to guide them to his exact location. As the sirens grew closer, signaling the police's approach, Pulido faced another challenge. The atmosphere grew tense as gunshots began ringing out. Anticipating potential confusion, he informed the operator about his appearance, ensuring they wouldn't confuse him with a criminal. Days after the traumatic incident, Images of Polito surfaced in the media. His right hand was bandaged, evidence of his desperate attempts to free himself, while the police were recognized for their quick response. It was Polito's courage and quick thinking that stole that spotlight. The incident involving Polito highlighted the increasing risks in Ciudad Victoria, an area plagued by the activities of cartels, especially Los Zetas. These groups have brought chaos to that region, making safety a primary concern for residents. Polito's kidnapping became a symbolic incident, drawing global attention to the security challenges in Tamaulipas. The state has been struggling with rising crime, particularly kidnappings, in recent years. With criminal factions battling for territory, the civilian population often found themselves caught in the crossfire. While Polito's escape drew commendation, questions arose regarding the speed and efficiency of the police response. As a high-profile individual like Polito located and rescued so swiftly, while many others remained missing. Now, these questions suggest bigger problems with how the police and the state deal with crime. Number 2. Eduardo Garcia Valseca.
I find myself blindfolded, bleeding, tied up.
June 2007, San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. Eduardo Garcia Valseca, a prominent businessman and son of a newspaper mogul, was ambushed and kidnapped by cartel members moments after dropping his children off at school. His car windows were shattered by men wielding hammers and clubs, turning a regular morning into this horrifying ordeal. Both Eduardo and his wife Jane were quickly overpowered. Without any warning or explanation, they were violently dragged from their vehicle, blindfolded and bound. The cold steel of the cartel's guns pointed at their heads was a reminder of their deadly situation. In this chaotic scenario, Jane's instincts kicked in. Blindfolded, she tried to mentally map out their route, counting turns and gauging distances, hoping to use any small detail later on. But fate seemed to have other plans, as she was soon discarded near a highway. Even though she was dazed, she managed to mesmerize the license plate of the vehicle that held her husband, potentially the only lead to his whereabouts.
The message basically said, "We've got Eduardo, and he's going to be with us until you pay us the sum of $8 million.
I told him I don't have that kind of money.
As days turned to weeks and weeks to months, the shadowy figures of the cartel weren't in a hurry. They demanded an $8 million ransom, an amount far from what the Valseca family could afford. When the ransom wasn't met, the punishments escalated, as Eduardo faced relentless beatings and even suffered gunshot wounds. Malnourished and isolated, he saw his weight plummet to below 100 pounds. After enduring 7 excruciating months, there was a glimmer of hope. Negotiations with the cartel reached a point where they agreed to a significantly reduced ransom, well below $1 million. 2 trusted employees of the Valseca family carried out the job of giving that money to the kidnappers as per their instructions. One of the employees was also kidnapped, but later released without any ransom. January 2008, Eduardo's return home was heartbreaking. He was a shadow of his former self. Weak, battered, and scarred, both physically and mentally. It took him a while to regain his voice, recognize familiar faces, and share a genuine smile. Determined to put the past behind him, the family relocated to the U.S., turning their pain into purpose and raising awareness about the impacts of organized crime. Today, away from the media's glare, Eduardo focuses on raising his children, healing from past wounds, and cherishing the memories of his late wife, Jane. And number 1. Luis Freddy Lala Pomavilla.
Viajando desde Ecuador a Honduras.
August 2010, northern Mexico. 72 migrants from countries like Honduras, El Salvador, Brazil, and Ecuador are found lifeless near a barn. They were bound and blindfolded, showing signs of a violent end. Luis Freddy Lala Pomavilla, an 18-year-old from Ecuador, miraculously survived this horrifying event. With a serious wound on his neck, he managed to flee and find a Navy checkpoint on the road, where he alerted the personnel about the tragedy. Armed men claiming to be from the Zetas cartel had abducted the migrants. Their motive? They wanted the migrants to work for them, When they refused, the killing began in cold blood. Now imagine the shock of Luis Freddy's family in Ecuador when they heard about this event. 2 months earlier, he had left his Andean village home, hoping for a better life in the U.S. He had paid $15,000 to smuggle his way, hoping for a fresh start. One of his 7 brothers, Luis Alfredo, recalled that he advised him against this journey. Freddy's young pregnant wife, Maria, had received a call from him a few weeks prior from Guatemala, assuring her all was well. Now, everything has changed. The release of Luis Freddy's identity posed a significant risk to his safety. To ensure his protection, the Ecuadorian government shifted him from a hospital to a secure naval base. Back in his home village, police were deployed to safeguard his family. Sadly, this incident wasn't unique. Migrants, especially those heading to the U.S., often face grave dangers during that journey through Mexico. Since 2008, organized crime groups, especially the Zetas, have targeted these travelers. There's even a report from 2009 stating that more than 1,600 migrants were kidnapped every month. What's the main goal? To force their US-based relatives to pay ransoms. What's even more alarming is the role of some corrupt officials in Mexico. Activists have found multiple instances of their involvement in these kidnappings. A Salvadoran migrant shared a terrifying account in the Universal newspaper, where she spoke of being made to cook and clean for her captors. Every day, many migrants would disappear, replaced by new faces, if ransoms weren't paid.